Good morning. My name is Michael Thompson. I'm the director of the Council of State Governments Justice Center. We administer the National Reentry Resource Center, and we are thrilled to have you here for the Second Chances and Safer Communities Conference of 2014. Thank you very, very much for coming to this lovely conference facility here in National Harbor. I say National Harbor because we are live streaming this event, and I'm sure some of your colleagues are watching this and they're scratching their heads and saying, National Harbor? I thought they were in Washington, D.C. Well, those of you who are here can nod assuredly when I say to everyone, this is not Washington, D.C. As a matter of fact, we have you effectively trapped in a lovely conference facility where it will be very difficult to get to museums or the Wizards game this evening. In fact, about the only way you'll be able to get there, I think, is commandeering some sort of kayak to get across the Potomac. Thank you very, very much for being with us today, and I want to congratulate all of you for coming to this conference because this was a special invitation to come to this event. The vast majority of you are grantees from the Department of Justice or from the Department of Labor. You received funding through the Second Chance Act or through the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program or through the U.S. Department of Labor's Reintegration on Ex-Offenders Program. Those were very, very, very tough grants to get. I can assure you that across the country, different programs and communities and counties and states were vying for limited federal funding in order to help seed and expand their particular program. You convinced the federal government that what you had was pretty special, really innovative, and something that deserved that federal investment. And so for that, congratulations, and we're thrilled to have you here. Together, you represent a pretty extraordinary combination of perspectives. You're here working with youth and adults. We have state corrections and local jails, community supervision, people across the court system and local law enforcement, people who have been incarcerated, crime victims, survivors, mentors, treatment providers, employment service providers. You represent really all of the different perspectives that need to come together in a community, in a county, or a state in order to do what it takes to reduce recidivism and improve success rates for people who've been incarcerated. So again, I want to thank you for helping us advance the field considerably. And if you don't mind, I'd like to tell you two quick stories that I think kind of embody some themes that are pretty relevant to what we'll talk about, even though the stories don't have anything to do with corrections or recidivism. The first is about my oldest son. Not too long ago, the letters went out, this is last school year, explaining which teachers the kids would get, right? They actually don't come now by mail anymore. You get those by email. And so I told my son, I said, well, the news came in. I know who your teacher's going to be next year. And he came over and said, well, who's it going to be? And I said, well, I guess your teacher's going to be Ms. McClellan. You're in 4M. And he pumps his fist. Yes, I got Ms. McClellan. I said, oh, why are you so excited to get Ms. McClellan? Well, he said, she's a teacher who's been there the longest at Washington School. I thought it was sort of interesting. I said, well, it's her experience, as a teacher, that you're really excited to have her. He said, no, it hasn't anything to do with it. Everybody in Washington School knows that the teacher who's been there the longest gets the air-conditioned room in Washington School. So I live in New Jersey, and it gets really hot in the summer. In the late spring, and also in the early fall. And this turns out to be the only air-conditioned room in Washington Elementary School. So, being the kind of government wonk that I am, I'm sort of fascinated by that and sort of, ask questions around and stuff. And it turns out a number of parents are upset that their child is not in the air-conditioned room. Other teachers are upset they don't have the air-conditioned room. Now, the principal's got a problem on his hands because a number of people are complaining about the tax dollars that are used to fund the air conditioning in that one room, and on it goes. So the principal announces a policy and says that the air conditioning is only allowed to go on when the temperature goes over 90 degrees in the classroom. So I think that's sort of an interesting way of trying to basically strike a bargain. And so I see my son running out for school the other day, and he's grabbing his sweatshirt. And I say, no, wait, I just checked the weather forecast, and the temperature's not supposed to get above 85 degrees. What's up with a sweatshirt? And he said, well, it gets real cold in Ms. McClellan's room when the air conditioning goes on. And I said, yeah, but again, I saw the weather, not supposed to get over 85 degrees. He said, oh, no, we got a system to deal with that. I said, really, what's the system? He said, well, Ms. McClellan has a heating pad, and since I'm the tallest kid in the classroom, we set up a step ladder, and I wave it in front of the thermometer, and that triggers the air conditioner. And presto, we got a cool air-conditioned room. What does that have to do with this conference? You are the people in the communities across the country who are finding the workarounds. You are the people who are figuring out what it takes in order to persuade a lot of people who might not have otherwise considered it was possible to change behaviors. And I mean behaviors of the people who are incarcerated. I mean the behaviors of the systems that have worked for those people for many years. You're demonstrating that it is possible to reduce recidivism, to get better outcomes, and in doing so, you have to first engage in the workarounds and then gradually change the culture of these entire organizations. And for that, I want to thank you. My second story is, again, something that involves kids. This is a story I heard from a governor not too long ago who said that his wife and his daughter were in the mall and they were walking through and a woman came up to them and said to the First Lady of the state, "What an honor to meet you, Ms. Henry. I'm so proud to have a chance to see you. I want to thank you for everything you and your husband are doing." And she was talking to her for a little bit, and she looked down at the 9-year-old daughter and beamed and said, "Oh, and who are you, little lady?" And the little girl looked up and said, kind of with a tight smile, "I'm the governor's daughter," and sort of announced it that way. And the woman said, "Oh, well, isn't that nice?" And the First Lady looked a little bit anxious and nervous and sort of chuckled nervously. And after the woman left, she reprimanded the girl and said, "Haley, you are not the governor's daughter. You are Haley, and I want you to remember that you are who you are, and that's who you should introduce yourself all the time going forward." So wouldn't you know it, 2 days later, the governor's wife and the daughter are walking out of a school function, and another person comes over to them, a woman, and says to Ms. Henry, "Oh, it's so nice to see you. It's really an honor to have the governor's wife here," and looks at the daughter and bends down on one knee and says, "And you must be the governor's daughter." And the little girl says, "I thought I was the governor's daughter until my mom told me I'm not." Tell that story because so much of your success is going to depend on how you communicate things, right? We're going to talk a lot about at this conference, if you come from a corrections background, you're talking about criminogenic risk, you're talking about reoffense rates, you're talking about measuring recidivism. That's a language that a lot of people from outside the criminal justice system really need to absorb. Similarly, if you're coming from a health perspective, you know that there isn't simply one mental illness. You know it's not a question of whether you're addicted or not. You know there's complicated questions around health insurance. There's a lot of communication we need to have across disciplines and really learn how to speak each other's languages. I next want to just talk quickly about how special this conference is. And again, for many of you may think, you came to a big federal conference and this is a neat but not fairly unusual activity. Not so. In fact, to have a conference these days is something that is quite unusual. The federal government, as you may know, has been under enormous pressure to stop convening people altogether for fear that it might generate unnecessary costs. We know, in fact, that there's no better way to help focus the work that you're doing and provide you with the tools and supports necessary. That said, these things cannot happen unless the people who are with us today, our partners from the Department of Justice, do everything they can to make it happen. It's rare that they can actually get authorization for a conference. They have to really do everything they can to persuade the powers that be to hold one, and they manage to do that because this topic in particular is so important. And for that, I really, really want to thank the director of BJA, Denise O'Donnell, who is here, as well as the fantastic team that she works with. Ruby Kozelbosch, Dr. Gary Dennis, Thurston Bryant, Julie James, and Amy Solomon from the Office of Justice Programs. You all have worked very, very hard to make this event happen. We are extremely grateful to you. Thank you very, very much. And to the terrific staff that we have at the Council State Government's Justice Center. Dr. Beth Skinner runs the National Reentry Resource Center. She comes from corrections. We're thrilled to have her. And Leah Kane, who has worked so hard to make this conference happen, together with the help of Shannon Fergus. They're all overseen by David DeMora, who's the director of the National Division. We have a fantastic team. I can't name them all by name, but those 4 people in particular, thank you very, very much for all you've done to make this a success. So now you get how important this conference is, how special it is that you're here. Here are some of the things I'd like to leave you with that I think are particularly important that you do. The first is do everything you can to soak up the research that we're going to be talking about. There's a lot of science that's coming out. We are so much smarter than we were 5 years ago about what it takes to reduce recidivism. I learned so much hearing from so many different people, experts who are coming to this conference. Please make sure you're doing everything you can to absorb what they're telling you about what the research says actually works. And it's one thing then to hear about the research. The second thing you need to do is figure out how to translate that into policy and practice. And so that's the second thing I hope that you take away from this conference. And then the third thing is to do everything you can to make connections and seize opportunities that you have with a vast number of people who are in this room. First of all, we have an extraordinary SWAT team from federal government agencies, 50 different federal government agency representatives representing a broad swath of multiple cabinet agencies. Make sure you connect with them and get to talk to them at some point during the conference. I mentioned the experts who are here and the unique opportunities you'll have to visit and talk one-on-one with them. You'll also get to meet your technical assistance providers from the National Reentry Resource Center and BJA, who can talk to you a lot more about how to make your grant a success. And then most importantly, connect with your peers. Those are the people who best understand what you're going through in your jurisdiction, whether you're working in a rural community, in tribal justice, or in a large urban area. Make sure you get a chance to connect with your counterparts from across the country. So with that, I want to introduce the director of the Bureau of Justice Assistance. Again, it's the Bureau of Justice Assistance that administers not only the Second Chance Act grant programs and the Justice and Mental Health collaboration programs, but so many other grant programs that are so relevant to the work that you do. We are thrilled that Denise O'Donnell is the director of BJA, not only because she's so committed to this work and these issues in particular, but also because of her experience on these things. She's a career federal prosecutor out of Western New York. After that, she ran the entire criminal justice and public safety apparatus for New York State. She gets these issues at all levels of government. She's incredibly committed. Denise, Director O'Donnell, thank you so much for being here, and I introduce you now.
Thank you, Mike, and good morning to all of you. It's so thrilling to stand here and look out and see this room filled with a broad network of professionals working on reentry issues. So welcome to today's conference. Let me begin with a huge thank you to Mike Thompson, the innovative and creative director of the Council of State Governments Justice Center, and to his entire team who worked tirelessly to bring this conference together and to bring some of the nation's leading experts to come and speak to us about issues of reentry and recidivism reduction and behavioral health and share their wisdom and experience. I loved listening to Mike's stories. It's very clear that his son is a chip off the old block in terms of his creativity and willingness to work hard and to work around some of the issues like getting conferences approved in the justice system. So thank you, Mike, and I'd love to meet all of your kids one of these days because I'm sure it would be a very interesting experience. At BJA, our work is guided by the following principles: to reduce crime, recidivism, unnecessary confinement, and promote a fair and just criminal justice system. I suspect those are principles that everyone in this room share. We know that any mission that we might have in the Justice Department or at BJA for reentry and justice systems reform are only achievable through a strong partnership with all of you. And that is the reason for this conference. I truly believe that years from now, people are going to look back at this time in history as a renaissance in criminal justice thinking, a time when we transformed the system through data-driven, evidence-based strategies and programs, a time when we sought to innovate and evaluate and measure outcomes. And you, our Second Chance Act and Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program and Department of Labor grantees, are national leaders in this area. From use of risk needs assessments to focus limited resources on persons with the highest risk of recidivism, to targeting services to the right people at the right time in the right programs in the right dosage. From enhancing educational and training, skills training opportunities and cognitive behavioral programs behind the walls, to providing a seamless transition to the community, improving access to health care benefits upon release, and enhancing community supervision. The job of reducing recidivism is so very challenging, but the options available to you now are so much more effective and promising than ever before. That is abundantly clear from the breadth and the depth of the sessions at this conference. And I hope you will go away with increased knowledge, new ideas, a deeper understanding of research principles, as Mike Thompson said, and new friends who will share ideas and best practices nationwide as we continue to grow this network of dedicated professionals in reentry, of which you are now part. Last September, we celebrated the 10th anniversary of the bipartisan Second Chance Act, which made possible so much of the work you are all doing. At the national level, the Second Chance Act funds the National Reentry Resource Center, which is coordinated by the Council of State Governments, which provides training and technical assistance and webinars and tools, including the What Works in Reentry Clearinghouse that educates the field on research-based reentry programs and strategies. The Second Chance Act supports collaborations between the Department of Justice, the Departments of Labor and Education, to provide education and job opportunities for formerly incarcerated persons. And has been a major source of funding for pilot Pay for Success programs that provide new and promising models for financing social programs. It supports important research projects by the National Institute of Justice and BJA to increase knowledge about what works to reduce recidivism and support effective reentry efforts. At the state level, the Second Chance Act funds recidivism reduction, currently a Race to the Top program that challenges state departments of correction to set real targets to reduce recidivism and to adopt effective reentry strategies to achieve those goals. And until separate funding was awarded this year, the Second Chance Act supported the Justice Reinvestment Initiative, currently working through a bipartisan, data-driven approach to reduce spending on corrections and reinvest cost savings in high-performing criminal justice programs in 20 states and 17 local communities. At the local and tribal levels, the Second Chance Act funds adult and juvenile reentry programs, programs for returning persons with co-occurring illnesses, career technology programs, family-based programs for young people, and culturally sensitive tribal reentry programs. And our newest Second Chance Act program, Smart Probation, funds innovative probation and parole programs to expand and enhance community supervision nationwide. In all, the Second Chance Act has provided over $300 million in funding for grant programs that have served nearly 90,000 individuals and is helping to change lives, strengthen families, remove barriers, improve outcomes, and make our communities safer. All of this continues to be possible because of the professionalism, the passion, and commitment of so many people in this room, and of all of our partners throughout the country. Thank you so much for what you do. In closing, although Mike started to do this, I want to recognize the strong and passionate team at BJA, which supports our Second Chance Act program. I'm just going to ask them to stand briefly. Associate Deputy Director Ruby Kalzabash, Policy Advisors Dr. Gary Dennis, Thurston Bryant, Julie James, and I saw some other people walk in the room, Trish Thurston, Danica Binkley, and from our programs office, individuals who manage your grants who are going to be meeting with you today about any personal questions or individual questions you have about your grant programs. Brenda Worthington, Anita Dobroska, sorry Anita, Anya, Michael Botner, Lucia Turk, Jennifer Lewis, and Tracy Willis. And they will all be available to meet with you. Thank you for what you do. We at BJA are here. Thank you. We at BJA are committed to help all of you succeed in your grant programs. So thank you for being part of this fantastic conference.
Thank you, Director O'Donnell. I'm now going to introduce, Tom Stickrath, who is the Superintendent of the Bureau of Criminal Investigation for the Attorney General's Office in the state of Ohio. For those of you in Ohio, you'll know that that's Tom's title today. But for those of you in Ohio who know what I know, which is that just about any major public safety challenge in the state of Ohio, Tom Stickrath has been charged with handling at one point or another in his career. He, for many years, worked for the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, where he rose to the level of deputy director there. After leaving ODRC, he moved over to the Ohio Department of Youth Services, where he led the juvenile justice system through a remarkable transformation that occurred in the juvenile correctional field and a model for states across the country. After his time at DYS, he then moved on to become the head of the Public Safety Agency in Ohio, and after that, he moved to where he is in the Attorney General's office. He's had a fascinating career looking at these issues through so many lenses, and any governor, regardless of what party they are or where they are, a legislator is, knows that Director Stickrath is a Mr. Fix-It for a public safety problem in Ohio. The reason why we asked him to speak here today, in addition to that impressive resume, is because he's also the chair of our board of directors. And I can't think of a person that we'd rather have to shepherd our work at the Justice Center than Superintendent Stickrath, given all the various perspectives that he's had. So with that, I turn it over to Director Stickrath.
Thank you, Mike. The fact is I take those jobs in Ohio that nobody else wants or applies for, I think. But thank you. It's great to see all of you here today. You know, just 2 days ago in Columbus, Monday of this week, my hometown newspaper, the Columbus Dispatch, had this bold headline, and so bold that some of you can probably see it from your seats, about as bold as they ever do on the front page. It's called Inmate Inflation. And it says 1 in 175 Ohio adults is in a crowded prison at taxpayer cost of $22,836 each annually. And the article went on, Mike, to note that we're a justice reinvestment state, and thank goodness, because without that, that headline would be much exacerbated. But I think for me it kind of highlights the importance of this week's event and why we're here today. And let me start too, Director O'Donnell, thanking you, commending our federal partners throughout the federal government, throughout DOJ, and certainly BJA, you and your terrific team for the work that you do to support these efforts around the country. We're very aware of it in Ohio, and we greatly appreciate your partnership. And let me join you, Director, in also commending Mike Thompson and his fabulous team, so many of which are here today. And I met with them earlier this morning to thank them personally. Mike, it's why I'm proud to be associated with the Justice Center. You guys do amazing work. But also let me commend all of you, because you're the ones doing this incredible work across our country day in, day out. And thank you for your participation here today in promoting second chances and safer communities. As Mike said in that nice introduction, I've had the opportunity to look at these issues of recidivism reduction and reentry through a number of lenses, through these positions that Mike described. But at each level and each position I had, substance abuse treatment has been a core issue in every agency where I've served. And I think our experience in fighting addiction has mirrored probably the experiences of many of you from across the country. As crack and powder cocaine ravaged Ohio's urban areas, meth labs and methamphetamine tore into our mid-sized cities like Youngstown and other rural communities across Ohio. In fact, we've had incredible increases in our trends of opiate use, almost tenfold increase in opiates, and I had the opportunity to be here in Washington 2 weeks ago and testify to that effect for Senator Portman. And as opioid distribution increased in Ohio, so did the unintended consequences of poisoning deaths and admissions for treatment. And now today, of course, the heroin epidemic is plaguing our state and our entire country. In Ohio, for $10 a day, in Columbus, $10 a day satisfies your heroin habit. And one phone call with this business-savvy model that the cartels use now. In Ohio, in the Columbus area, one phone call can get heroin delivered to your house faster than a pizza, or as my teenage daughter says, faster than Jimmy John's. It's alarming. So what are we doing about this in Ohio? Director, we're determined to look at our recidivism rates, and we found that particularly in our poor rural communities, they're considerably higher than the recidivism rates in other counties in our state. And we believe this is true in part because effective community-based drug treatment is especially hard to find in some of these rural locations. Our strategy in Ohio focuses on using data and the latest research to combat illegal drug use and to treat addictions. Taking the data we have about recidivism in rural parts of Ohio, we are developing a strategy that focuses on 10 rural counties where recidivism rates exceed reincarceration rates anywhere else in the state. And we also know that treating the co-occurring substance abuse and mental health disorders requires integrated treatment. And so we're merging the departments of substance abuse and mental health to ensure more effective, coordinated treatment responses. We've also determined, with the assistance of research from the Council of State Governments Justice Center, we've determined that our community correction programs were not realizing their full potential, in part because we were not sending the right people to these programs who would benefit most from them. So we've changed our state law to prioritize the placement of people with higher criminogenic risk levels and substance abuse needs into these programs. We're proud of our accomplishments to date. We know we have a lot of work left to do, but we are proud of our accomplishments. We're also grateful to the national leadership, particularly from Ohio, for their support of our initiatives. I'm especially grateful to Senator Portman for his leadership on criminal justice and treatment reforms. He was an original author of the Second Chance Act, and were it not for his continued support, frankly, we wouldn't be here today. And again, I had the honor of being here 2 weeks ago on Capitol Hill at his invitation and Senator Whitehouse, a bipartisan approach, Senator Whitehouse from Connecticut, to talk about the opioid and heroin issues that are plaguing our country. I'd also like to congratulate the 2013 Ohio grantees that are in the room and with us today and thank them for their hard work. The Department of Youth Services, my former agency, thank you. Fairfield County, Cuyahoga County, Sandusky County, Opportunities Industrialization Center of Clark County, and the Lucas County Criminal Justice Treatment Coordinating Council. To you I say that I see this as a time of great opportunity in criminal justice. Never before have we had such robust discussion about offender reentry. Never before have we had our state correction system so focused on reducing recidivism. Never before have we seen so much positive work across our country that looks at the intersections of criminogenic and behavioral health risk factors. And never before, Mike, as you alluded to, have we known so much about what works and what doesn't work. And that's why this is such an exciting time for me, and I hope for all of you who care about second chances and safer communities, to be a part of this criminal justice field.